Welcome to No Spoiler Thaumaturge review, you voodoo bastards. A review key was provided by the publisher, but it doesn't affect my view of the game in any way. Played through it once and it took me about 20 hours on the hardest difficulty. Got a pre-release version, so a couple things might improve for the final release, but I can only review the product at hand with potential score given if some things are fixed in the future. Thaumaturge is a turn-based RPG developed by Fool's Theory that is focused on story, dialogue choices and turn-based combat. Thaumaturge is something like a mystic that can discover secrets of the human soul by drawing conclusions based on evidence found and by analyzing flaws. They also have access to darkness and Thaumaturges that are attached to the flaws. Thaumaturges are basically demons that manipulate humans and attack them in combat. They are fantastically done from an aesthetic standpoint and varied playstyles that each bring to combat. Let's start with the story. Setting is 1905 Warsaw that is under Russian rule with varied nationalities and ideologies that clash with one another. Socialists, Jews, Russians and Polish freedom fighters are part of this very interesting society. Viktor Shulsky is the main character, a thaumaturge whose dad died, so he had to get back to Warsaw for the funeral and to find out how he died. This is where the story starts, and immediately drags the player in with interesting characters introducing themselves, all somehow connected to Shulsky family. Main story is great with interesting twists and aftermath that is defined by the many important decisions previously made. These decisions are usually which side to take, how to resolve a situation, and how much information has been obtained to even have options to pick from. Dialogue system is very hands-on with many options. Consequences of each decision can be immediate or accumulated towards a particular quest ending that is also connected to ending options. Can't really say how deep it all goes because it would take many playthroughs to understand the consequences of every decision. It does mean, however, that replayability is high. 2 or 3 playthroughs are quite realistic for everyone that buys the game. While the dialogue system is really good because it gives the player something to think about and to immerse themselves in it at all times, the dialogue writing style and presentation itself is mediocre. Voice acting is all over the place with a couple actors sounding great, majority being mediocre and others doing a bad job.
Wizard scum. It's not a fair fight with them.
Enough! You and you. Get them.
But...
Save your powers for later. They'll come in handy. Let's go.
Michal, leave him alone, bastards!
Geroi, you're coming with us too.
Facial expressions and animations are also mediocre, but the biggest issue is that dialogue is slow due to lots of filler sentences and slow line delivery. Eventually I started skipping most of the dialogue after reading subtitles quickly because watching and listening wasn't adding anything to the effect.
To her family. If he knew I studied, he'd beat me until I was bleeding.
We all take some risk. Well, maybe everyone except Polina.
What do you mean?
She's Russian, and I'm sure she'll bring the police down on us. I don't know why Dickstein trusts her.
Couldn't wait to uncover the next plot and what twist the game is gonna throw at me next to the future consequences of my decisions. Even the ending surprised the heck out of me. There are multiple endings, by the way, which adds high replayability. Problem is that in the next playthrough a lot of conversations are gonna be skipped almost entirely just to get to the point or to the fight. Oh yeah, and fight initiating dialogue is quite bad. Like they had to write something to throw in. In some cases it makes sense because fights can be avoided through the dialogue, so they had to throw in some kind of conversation starter.
What are you doing here, you tramp?
I'm not looking for trouble, I just wanted to talk.
We'll talk, all right.
Outside of fighting, you'll be spamming perception in order to find clues that are easily spotted. These clues can be unlocked only if one of 4 attributes are high enough. By collecting a set of clues that have something in common, a conclusion can be drawn that Thaumaturge uses to uncover the truth about people and events. Collecting clues reminds a lot of classic adventure games, although it isn't similar even, just parts of it. It is quite a straightforward mechanic that does eventually start to bore a bit. Constantly pressing the perception button, I mean, not the text in clues, because that is fantastically done. Larger perception circle would be a far better option for immersion. Gathering clues also leads to unlocking side quests and points of interest that grant a significant amount of XP. Leveling character even close to the maximum requires a lot of progress in side content. Side quests are solid and closely follow story progression and characters. I like that a lot because there are no insignificant ones. Points of interest are more busy work, but I do like the fact that they are undiscoverable until clues have been obtained first. Only problem I had with the whole clues and attribute requirement system is that it seemed like I could uncover everything by using balanced point distribution until the last mission. Might be the case of developers purposely forcing balanced point distribution to uncover as many clues as possible because it would be a nightmare programming different progression options for every missed clue due to attribute distribution. If that was the goal, then they succeeded. Now we get to combat. I quite like it. Main issue is balancing and not the combat itself. On the hardest difficulty I was challenged twice and both times it was against optional Salutor bosses. Outside of it there was no incentive to play with attributes and skill upgrades that much. It's a shame because I quite like combat and simple character progression, but the game never pushes you to utilize it fully. Combat mechanics are really good in terms of tactical approach. Turn order is very important with the possibility of interrupting planned actions. There are quick, normal and slow attacks. Slow ones are more powerful of course. Then we have enemy buffs that can be removed only with a specific Salutor. So damage distribution next to status play, be it buff or debuff, with added focus attribute. When focus reaches 0, then the affected party enters a breakdown state where strongest attacks become available. I love attack animations and the fact they can be sped up in options. There is a nice impact feel to everything that is done except the majority of Salutor attacks. Some are done well, but many seem to have missing a proper sound effect that could create more impact on strike. Same thing when it comes to Salutor attacks. Some of them have very cool attacks while others have incredibly weak looking ones. Sound effects can be improved with patches, so I'm not worried. They have nailed Victor attacks with great animations, feel and sound effects. No reason why they can't add better ones to Salutor attacks. Great little aesthetical detail is when Salutors are switched during combat. Not only do Salutors look fantastic, but a small thing like that makes it even better. I dig this type of combat a lot because planning is key next to mandatory Salutor use. I love the fact that they participate each turn and not only through special attacks or something like that. Combat UI is fantastic as well, very transparent to the point of showing how much health and focus Victor is about to lose when planned actions from each enemy is done. Visually, I was shocked at how amazing locations look. So many small details like mud and water on the streets with high building detail. Unfortunately, sprites don't look nearly as good, quite average, but that's alright. Music is great, although a couple more combat tunes would be awesome addition. Voice acting, so as mentioned earlier, is mediocre. Sound effects for Victor and enemies are great, but Salutors could use more work. This leads to the final verdict. Some things are gonna get better over time, like optimization on PC for example, as they usually do. Probably a couple on the release date already. My score for Thaumaturge is 6, with a potential of 7. It can easily reach 7 by balancing things out a bit more. Great, but non-challenging combat, great story, mediocre dialogue with many interesting choices, fantastic looking locations, Salutors are awesome. On a personal note, I have enjoyed the game up until the last third when only the story and consequences of my choices were the driving force towards finishing it. Lots of balancing could change that. Don't forget that on release date some of the things might be better as this is a pre-release version. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you soon.